Daron Payne suspended for one game, and somehow that wasn't even the biggest story surrounding the Washington Commanders defense early this week. Let's get right to it.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is the Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network around. I am David Harrison, your guy on the ground, covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9. You can also find me on Commanders on SI. You can find me on X at DHarrison82. Coming up on today's episode, all the fallout coming from the Washington Commanders' latest loss to the Detroit Lions, including a new defensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders, and Daron Payne suspended. All that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And it's all brought to you by FanDuel right now. New customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And if you're watching on YouTube, live or otherwise, no, I have not been arrested. I have not been interred in a facility. We are in Frankfurt, Germany, en route to Madrid, Spain. Had about a 2.5-hour layover or 2.5-hour delay leaving Dulles. Fantastic, fun times. So got into Germany later than expected. So now my flight to Madrid is later than expected. So I was able to carve out just enough time to go live here, get this episode out, because a lot of things happening while I was sitting on the tarmac in Washington, waiting to take off to Madrid. So that's what we're doing. I rented a sleep pod in Frankfurt, Germany. That is how we do it. You got to get the job done, figure it out somehow, some way. And that is what Dan Quinn is trying to do by taking over the duties as defensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders. Dan Quinn sharing that with the media on Monday in his day after game press conference that he does every single week. DQ saying, quote, "That'll call for some change, and I'll take over the role as the defensive coordinator and all that entails." He said, he clarified, they just basically feel off. Execution, the consistency that we're searching for, quote unquote, just not there for the defense. And I don't think anybody watching this program, certainly not the person talking on the program, is going to disagree with what Dan Quinn is saying there in his comments, right? So Joe Whitt Jr., look, he's not leaving. He's going back up to the booth. He is going to have a role. Dan Quinn said that he quote, took the news like the pro he is, and quote, will have vision on the coverage. So it's a little bit interesting here, right? Because like, what is the actual role here? And we don't have a whole lot of details of like what the day-to-day is going to look like. Obviously, we might see a little bit of that tomorrow, Wednesday, our first practice here in Spain. So obviously all eyes are going to kind of be on like, where is Joe Whitt Jr. operating, because they've got a defensive pass game coordinator, Jason Simmons. So you've already got him focused on the coverage. You got Tommy Donatel, the defensive backs coach, obviously focused on the coverage. You've got Willie Gay Jr., who's obviously focused on the coverage. So like, and Joe Whitt Jr. is a back end guy. He's a secondary guy. So obviously that makes sense. But kind of where is that going? Because it doesn't sound like, Joe is moving down a spot and everybody else is moving down a spot. It sounds like everybody else is still in their positions. So defense pass game coordinator, still the defense pass game coordinator. DB's coach, still the DB's coach. And Joe Whitt, I don't want to call him a floater, but it kind of sounds like he's maybe just a little bit of a floater. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm always honest with you guys. Look, I have a really good relationship with Joe. I like Joe a lot. The dude has taught me a whole lot about football just in about the year and a half that I've gotten the opportunity to know him. I hate this for him. I hate seeing things go the way that they have gone, but we've been talking about it for the last few weeks here on the program, that something had to change, right? They knew it. We knew it. You knew it. Something had to change. And I've always said, like, the closest you're going to hear me calling for a guy's job is saying that something's got to change. If you're not the man that can bring that change, or the person, the coach that can bring that change, then you've got to change, because we got to find somebody who can bring the change that the team needs. Obviously, Dan Quinn got to the point where he figured out that, Joe, you're not instituting, you're not bringing up they bring forth this change that we need on the defense. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can be the guy to bring forth the change on the defense. And if Dan can't do it, they'll go out there looking for another coach to do it next year. But this is, I've been asked by a couple of insiders since this news came out, is this basically a sign that Joe is getting fired in the offseason? And to me, yeah, I think that it is. I think it's basically the closest you get to being fired without being fired, right? Like it's pretty much what it is, and keeping him on not on the payroll because he's going to get paid his contract regardless, but keeping around, letting him kind of hopefully be part of that positivity, part of that, and develop Joe as well. Like his coaching career is not over, right? Like Joe Whitt Jr. has way too much experience, way too many connections, all that kind of stuff for his coaching career to be over. But there's obviously some growth that needs to go there. And, it's his first time as a defensive coordinator, all those things. So when the time comes, if the time comes, we'll wish him well because he is a good man. But Dan Quinn taking over, we'll see how much of an impact he can really make in the short term because nothing helps an interim defensive coordinator, even one that's also the head coach, than losing arguably your best player on the defense this year, defensive tackle Daron Payne, who has been painfully inconsistent his entire career. I'm not telling you guys, Commanders fans, anything you don't already know about Daron Payne and his inconsistencies, right? But Daron Payne, not only inconsistent, but now he's just not going to be out there for the game. Ejected in the second quarter of the loss against the Detroit Lions for smacking Amon-Ra St. Brown against the helmet. Again, an action that I will never understand. And now he's also been suspended for a game. He did appeal, and I like the closest I could get to it was like Jalen Carter in the beginning of the year. If you remember, Eagles D lineman Jalen Carter spitting in the face of Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott before the first play of the game even took place. He was kicked out of that game. Initially was going to be suspended, but they decided not to suspend him. It wasn't even an appeal. They just decided not to suspend him, basically because they're like, well, he missed the game because he didn't play a single snap in that entire game. So that was kind of your quote unquote suspension. So with Daron Payne, however, because this happened into the second quarter, 1, 2, in the grand scheme of things, like, look, don't spit on people, don't hit people. But in the grand scheme of things, like spitting on a person is going to do less damage than potentially hitting a person is going to do. So there's also that. And I mean, just the full on, like, Charlie Murphy, like Dave Chappelle, what the hand say to the face. I mean, it was wild, man. It was wild. So yeah, not surprised it got suspended. Not surprised that it got held up. So Daron Payne not in Spain because when you're suspended like this, you're actually not on the roster. You're actually moved to the reserve suspended list. So he's actually not even on the active roster this week, which is what allows them to withhold his game check, which is a little over $1 million. So it's a pretty big slap that Daron Payne got back from the NFL for the slap that he gave to Amon-Ra St. Brown. And again, that's not going to help Dan Quinn. It's not going to help Daron Payne. Look, I'm going to be honest with you guys. We've talked about this over the years on the program. Daron Payne, very hot and cold. I kind of have, I don't say issue because it's not my place to really take issue with his approach, but I'm not really a fan of the like, oh, well, I kind of like to get into the game and the other team basically has to pump me up in order to get the best out of me. And I don't really like the optics of it. Kind of just seems like when his career is on the line, right? Contract year, even this year, like technically it's not a contract year because he does have another year on his contract next season, but because of the guaranteed money, the Washington Commanders really, if they have no reason other than Daron Payne showing them that they need to keep him, they can let him go or trade him and free up a whole lot of money that they can use elsewhere. At this point, you have just kind of the history. You have Bobby Wagner having to pump him up on the sideline during the loss against the Seattle Seahawks. You have this action, like after getting talked to all off season from the coaching staff, and I'm not, saying that they're necessarily wrong about his behind the scenes behavior, but you gotta, if your coaches are going to talk the talk about you, you also have to kind of walk the walk at some point in time, or else you're basically showing that you're not really concerned with what you're not going to go out there and back them up. Like your coaches are out here trying to tell us, we don't know why you don't see this in Daron Payne. Daron Payne is this, that, and the other. And then you do stuff like this. And then you're, needing to be motivated by Bobby Wagner on the sideline. You're supposed to be a leader in that defensive line room. You were supposed to be doing the motivating, right? So at this point, guys, I'm again, we've got a couple of months of football left for things to maybe change. But if it's November 11th, it's the end of the season, I'm out on Daron Payne. Go ahead and let's see if we can get some draft picks for him. If not, hey, buddy, good luck to you with the rest of your NFL endeavors. So no Joe Whitt as the defensive coordinator. I know some of us are going to think it's, what is it, dime short, dollar late? I don't know what the saying is, but you understand what I'm saying. Too little, too late, right? No Daron Payne, but that's not it. It actually gets even worse. So we'll dive into all of this even further as we continue with this live episode from Frankfurt, Germany. Locked On Commanders officially international here, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by Rippling. And if you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS was promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply just don't work well together. That's not SaaS, that's SAD. It's software as a disservice, SAAD, SAD. That's why you need Rippling. Rippling is a unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control by uniting your employees, teams, and departments in one system. Rippling removes the bottlenecks, busyworks, and the silos your software has created. So right now you can get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/lockedonnfl. That's rippling.com/lockedonnfl to learn more. Again, rippling.com/lockedonnfl for 6 months free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, in part by FanDuel. The NFL season is rolling on. The playoff push is about to get real serious, and the NBA is also heating up on the hardwood. There's no better place to get in on all of that action than on FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game, you miss tip-off, you're jumping in the middle of the game, figure out who's got the hot hand, go in there, make some live bets that guy's going to either stay hot or maybe he's going to cool off, or maybe you see a fourth quarter comeback coming. Whatever it is, you can bet before the game, you can bet during the game, you can bet after the game, just not on the game that already was played, on other future games, I guess, then before the game. Same game parlays. You guys know I love same game parlays. You get to stack a whole lot of prop bets and do your thing. It keeps everything exciting. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com, sign up today, play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Moving on now here, Locked On Commanders. We are on our way to Spain, so we're going to do this, kind of put a bow on the most recent loss and now the fallout, the aftermath of that loss, 44-22 to the Detroit Lions, in case you didn't remember. You need a reminder. We left that game with two burning questions. One of them about the defense, which we will get back to. Started heavy with the defense. We're going to switch gears a little bit to the offense. The burning question is Marcus Mariota. Can he keep the Washington Commanders competitive against the Miami Dolphins? That is going to be the big question. He had a very good rating, passer rating on Sunday afternoon into Sunday evening in the loss against the Lions, 133.3. But of course, the question is, was that garbage time production, quote unquote, or was that legitimate production? That can be expected to be seen here in week 11. And so Jayden Daniels is, nobody expected him to play this week, right? I think we all were on that beat. I think you're looking at Denver Broncos after the bye week at the earliest. I think really the realistic expectation should be Minnesota after the Denver Broncos game. So Marcus Mariota expected to be starter. He is the starter. In fact, Jayden Daniels not even traveling to Spain. Personally, I think that probably has more to do with a lot of the promotional stuff he was supposed to do out here. He was supposed to do some stuff with Fanatics, some fan engagement. And, look, Jayden loves doing that stuff with you guys, but nobody wants Jayden out and about in the spotlight and all this other stuff with his arm in a sling, right? So I think it just kind of makes sense. So Jayden Daniels not traveling to Spain. Terry McLaurin, however, is traveling to Spain. So that's good to hear. He will not play. He's already ruled out. He is not going to play. He's going to continue his rehab here with the team and the trainers and all that stuff. But he is going to be with the team, provide that moral support for what that's worth. And it can be worth a good thing. So that means that the offense in Madrid is basically exactly what we saw against the Detroit Lions. Marcus Mariota, quarterback, without his top wide receiver. Debo out there. Also, no Treylon Burks. We'll get into that here in just a little bit as well. So that's actually, I think that, 3 weeks ago, if you would have told me no Treylon Burks in Spain was a big deal, I probably would have been like why? But then I would have called myself stupid because, well, no, duh. Look at the course of the season, and he's probably your number one receiver because of all the injuries at this point. But look, doing some self-scouting, and I say self-scouting loosely because I'm obviously not a Washington Commander, but doing a little bit of internal scouting on the Washington Commanders, looking back in towards the team that we cover here. Marcus Mariota is trending up. His PFF grade, which I know not everybody loves, but 79.6, again, a strong grade for him, kind of echoes that passer rating that we saw. He was efficient even without Terry McLaurin. Explosive pass plays were also trending up. So 79.1 grade when passing to Treylon Burks was really solid. 3 for 3 there, 58 yards. Again, unfortunately, Treylon Burks is not going to be on the field, but hopefully Marcus can continue to find ways to get guys involved. And of course, DQ is going to back up his starting quarterback as well. Gave him a huge vote of confidence. Quote, "There's not a player that I respect more than Marcus, so his insights are usually spot on." end quote. And that was kind of in response to not just Marcus as a person, but Marcus also kind of being blunt and really refreshingly blunt. If you missed the comment, basically saying, like, yeah, we don't know who we are, but we also aren't who we think we are. And I think that was a really solid comment. And I think it was a really honest comment. And I really applaud Marcus for doing it, because he didn't do it in kind of a negative way, right? But it was like acknowledging, and he used the word transparency, right? Like let's just be transparent. Let's just be honest about what it is we are. And we don't know exactly what we are, but we do know is we aren't who we want to be, or we aren't who we thought we would be. I think that's really important, because the old cliche, first step to solving a problem is identifying that you have a problem, and at least Marcus Mariota is out there identifying. Again, I think Marcus's comments really kind of reflect the internal understanding. You know what I mean? As much as guys don't want to necessarily say that and admit it to the media and in front of fans and all that stuff, usually I think that's really what that's more. But either way, really good comments to hear from Marcus Mariota. And you're kind of hoping, like, maybe a little bit of that honesty in the forefront, like, where we're not trying to hide it. It's going to be really interesting. We don't get locker room access here in Spain just because of the logistics of it all. But we are going to get multiple players every day for interviews, at least is what we're told right now. I don't have a list of who, but like, you can pretty much bet that with Marcus Mariota saying that comment, like when you're starting quarterback, and I know he's not the starting quarterback, but when your starting quarterback makes a comment like that, it kind of loosens guys up a little bit, kind of lets them speak a little bit freely, right? And it's not to say that guys haven't spoken freely like that, maybe off the record or some side conversations, things like that. But it's different being on the record, right? So we'll see what kind of impact that has on guys and their transparency moving forward with each other, but also in the media. And then if you're looking for an elite trait here with a Marcus Mariota-led offense that can maybe do some damage against Miami Dolphins defense, that honestly is not all that great. Like, it's not a stellar defense. I know they did really well against the Buffalo Bills, but like, division games are always kind of weird, so you always want to take those with a grain of salt. And they just lost Jalen Phillips, really good young pass rusher at the trade deadline. Red zone offense really remains the only consistently successful part of this offense. Week 10, they were 3 for 3 touchdowns in the red zone. Laramie Tunsil, 83.6 pass blocking grade. No pressures credited to Laramie Tunsil in week 10. So you love to see that kind of stuff. So you can continue that, protect Marcus, execute in the red zone. Again, we kind of talked about it before. The biggest thing about executing in the red zone is you got to get to the red zone. They weren't doing that a lot of weeks before. So you see that kind of come back a little bit against the Detroit Lions, even if it wasn't enough to overcome the defensive fallacies. And of course, we've got some defensive burning questions to answer, and we've got some injury updates, and we've got some evaluations coming out of week 10, all to wrap up this episode. Coming up next on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over there at Peloton. Look, folks, it's time to break through the busiest time of the year with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus that's powered by Peloton IQ. It's Peloton's most elevated technology and equipment yet that gives you real-time guidance, and it gives you endless ways to move, whether you want to work out by yourself or if you want to work out with your favorite instructor, like my personal favorite, Alex Toussaint. He always gets me fired up to tackle the day. And the thing I like about Peloton, it helps me achieve more in less times. They have features that help you plan, stay motivated, track your progress, and Peloton IQ also provides personalized workout plans and recommendations. That's something that I use right now during the busiest time of the year covering the NFL. They plan my workouts for me based on my mood, my vibe, and also my favorite instructors. So make sure you check it out and use it, because it also helps you correct your form in real time, and it maximizes your reps. It counts your reps so that you can do it smarter, safer, and more efficient. Let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders, we are here in Frankfurt, Germany, en route to Madrid, Spain. Very next episode after this one will be a mailbag episode. I want to give a shout out to all the everydayers, those who come through for every single episode. Of course, I want to give you your special thank you for continuing to support the show, even when the product on the field doesn't necessarily make us always excited to come here and talk about the team. But you know what? Football is still a great part of life, man. You got to enjoy what you can enjoy. Unfortunately, things you can enjoy are getting a little bit thinner by the week. 5 more players injured in the loss to the Detroit Lions. Some of them more significant than others. Trey Amos Ankle injury, fractured his fibula, Dan Quinn revealed, is going to miss significant time. I'm going to go ahead and call it a season-ending injury. Again, significant time doesn't necessarily mean season-ending, but I kind of just don't see the reason to bring him back at this point in time. Ale Cajo, linebacker, suffered a concussion. He did not travel to Spain with the team. Running back Chris Rodriguez Jr. suffered a shoulder injury. He did travel with the team, so he is here. So it looks like he's trending towards playing, at least has a chance of playing. All of that, of course, on top of Marshawn Lattimore, Luke McCaffrey the week before, of course, Jayden Daniels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Injuries and health, easily the biggest crisis on this team all year, and it's just kind of helped either bleed into these other crises or exacerbate them, right? Like Joe Witt's, deficiencies as defensive coordinator, defensive play caller, are only made worse because of the injuries. They're not because of the injuries by themselves, but they're only made worse because of the injury. Basically, an anchor, dragging this team down. Coming out of week 10, got some evaluations here. Our bottom 3 players are going to be Javon Kinlaw. 2 penalties, especially, a really big part of the lack of discipline, letting those frustrations boil over. Javon is a very emotional person. I actually really dig that about him. We've had some really good conversations, but on the playing field, and I'm not saying anything he doesn't know. I'm not saying anything that he can't fix moving forward. Can't let those moments get the best of you. Quan Martin also really just kind of indicative of the entire past defense's struggles. But Quan Martin specifically, definitely not a great game. Last stand type of environment coming into Madrid here. I mean, you're 3-7, coming into this game. In order to salvage even a winning record, you got to win every game but one, like minimum. You got to win every game, but you have a 1-game margin of error. The odds of playoffs are, ridiculously low. It's just kind of one of those things. I think that's where a lot of people are going to kind of say this move for Dan Quinn to take over defense coordinator duties is a little bit too late. Like, probably should have done that at like loss number 5 or something like that. Maybe even loss number 6, right? But the processes are what they are. That we got to where we got to now. And the next step, of course, is the road game in Madrid. Washington Commanders against the Miami Dolphins. We will kick off practice on Wednesday. I will be going off of about 12 hours being on country by the time we cover our first practice. So that's going to be fun for first world problems. Our next episode is going to be a mailbag episode. So insiders, get your questions over to me. If you want to get in on those mailbag episodes, all you got to do, join up, be a Locked On Commanders insider. Join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Not only do you help get to carve some of the content on the program, you get access to me, if that's a thing that sounds appealing to you, beyond the show, and you get inside information, you get bonus content, you get access to our pregame and postgame Zoom conferences where you can come through and you can yell and scream and all this kind of stuff, or we can rejoice in a miracle win, snapping a 5-game losing streak, hopefully. For your next listen, check out Locked On NFL. Twice per day, you can get Locked On NFL, the national view on the Washington Commanders and everything else going on around the league. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you're listening to today's podcast. Every day, I see you. I appreciate you every single day. Till next time, everybody out there, please be safe, be kind to one another. We'll see you again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.